Today we're doing something out of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 1st edition, and what I'd like to discuss today, it's sort of part of the idea of rarely asked questions, or at the very least infrequently asked, and it is about monsters that have psionics. So we've discussed psionics a little bit in the past, but what I would like to sort of suggest is that fair enough, you may say to yourself, I'm not playing no psionics. You may also say, you know, my characters that are in my adventures, they're not having psionics. So what do I need to understand about? Well, unfortunately, the moment that they come across a demon, a devil, or a mind flayer, as a classic example, psionics is going to be introduced in some way. You may not allow the players to have it. You may think that it's all weird or not very D&D like or whatever. Just difficult, and that's all good. This is a completely optional section for the players to have. However, the idea of psionics is in the game, and that means that we need to still look at it, especially on how monsters do it and what that means for the players. So looking at one of the most quintessential D&D monsters, the Mind Flayer, also known as the Illithid. We have points, we have these letters, and we also have a list of what the psionic abilities are down here and what level they're at, which is important as well. So reading through here, we can see that they have levitation, domination, ESP, body equilibrium, astral projection, probability travel, and they all perform it at a 7th level of mastery. That makes them pretty good, but what does it mean and how are you going to do it? If you're a DM that has no psionics in the game, then suddenly there's a module that runs within Illithid or a Mind Flayer, and we're looking at it. What are we supposed to do? How are the players supposed to react? And more importantly, how are you going to work this out? What can it do versus the players, and so on. So all of the psionic attacks and defenses come with letters. So there are 5 psionic attack modes, but only one that can be used against non-psionics, and that is attack mode A, the Psionic Blast, which requires 20 points to use of attacking strength. It has a range which is modified, and then from there the players get to save based on their intelligence, combined intelligence and wisdom. Since we're dealing with characters, we actually know what the wisdom is. We're not thinking in terms of against creatures and monsters that you don't know, but there is a chart also in the DM's Guide which we'll have a look at, which will bring that out as well. In terms of defense modes, which is only useful if they're being attacked by another psionic. Since we're dealing with only psionic creatures, and we're assuming that the rest of the party are not psionic, then we don't worry about it too much at the moment, but we'll gloss over it as we look through all the various charts. And Lord knows there are charts. So the Mind Flayer actually runs a little bit different, because it's got an attack mode of B, which is not the Mind Assault, the Psychic Blast that it's allowed to use. However, it's got a special power that effectively is the same thing. A Mind Blast of psionic power, and then you attack on non-psionic. So it's treated exactly like the same thing, but it's an innate ability as opposed to the actual psionic power, which sort of makes it a little bit of difference. However, you still use the same sort. You could easily say, I should say, not so much however, but you could easily say I'm using the same conditions. The biggest condition with using a psychic attack against non-psionics is that it needs to have at least 100 points or more of psionic ability, like psionic strength. So when you see that they've got total psionic ability of 241 to 340, that half of that represents an attack strength and the other half is defense strength, but the total amount is what they have for their overall psionic ability. As the creature uses its psionic abilities, it uses the overall points, which then come off the attacks and defenses. So with the psionic attack or psionic ability of 340 points, the character, like the creature, uses its general psionic abilities, does something funky with them, whatever, spends points. So if it spends 20 points, that 340 now goes to 320, which is 160 attack and 160 defense. So as you use your psionic abilities, it diminishes your strengths and attack and defenses slowly, but it does oh so surely. And also, obviously, when you get attacked by psionics, it comes off your points and your defenses. You throw up defensive mechanisms, and when you launch attacks, usually you spend the attack. However, because this is an innate ability, it's easy to sort of suggest, well, it's an innate ability. That doesn't say that he has an attack of A. He's got an attack of B, which is something that can only be used against another psionic. This is a very special mind blast, but you still treat it as a mind blast. So between half an inch in diameter at the point of the head or the mind flayer, so that's 5 feet, because remember when we're dealing with ranges, inches are feet, so that's 5 feet to 2 inches at the end, which is 20 feet, but a total of a 60-foot range. So for all intents and purposes, it uses the exact same mechanism as Mind Blast. It's just that it's not a Mind Blast, if that makes sense. But you still use the psionic attack and versus non-psionics, which we'll have a look at in a second. So the Mind Blast, or the Psionic Blast as it's also known, so I'm assuming we're using that as its proxy, 246 in short, medium and long ranges, and you have an effective saving throw versus Psionic if you get attacked with a Mind Blast or a Psionic Blast, and it's based entirely on combined intelligence and wisdom. With that, you've got a number just like a normal saving throw. If you fail the saving throw, that's when bad things can happen. So the sort of crazy stuff that can happen are things like it's confused for a limited amount of time, it's enraged, you fall into a panic, and permanent insanity, and so on, as well as, for some reason, death, coma, and just sleep. So depending on your intelligence and wisdom, and most characters will be in that, likely to be in that 26 to 29 category, which is right there. So the lion's share is going to be panic. So the line between 16 and 90, if you fail your saving throw, you roll the percentile dice, and the between 16 and 90, which is the majority, you will be in a panic. It's 26, 29, so that's like 13 intelligence, wisdom, roughly, similar sort of thing for 15 and 14, and so on. 30 to 33, the lion's share becomes feeble-minded. So, which is still bad. That's actually worse, by the way. At least with panic, you're only affected for 2 to 4 or 2 to 8 rounds, 2d4. But if you get feeble-mind, it lasts until a heal, restoration, or a wish is used. Ouch. So that's nasty, people. That's why they're dangerous. So if you've got your 100 points or higher, you spend your 20 points for your attack every time, and this is what happens here. Make a saving throw. You've got lots and lots and lots and lots of options for adjustments, and Being a dwarf is good, being a halfling is good. Being an elf is okay. Magic user and clerics. So these are your modifiers to your saving throw. And we're awesome. So hopefully that will help. Yeah. So when you're looking at the 26 to 29 category, or the 30 to 33, well, 8, 7 and 6, and 6, 5 and 4 respectively, and that's not so bad. So that it doesn't make it something that it's impossible to avoid. It just makes it, if it does damage you or it does hit you and it does affect you, you're in trouble. But it won't affect everybody at the one hit, but it'll probably do a number on someone. So as a DM, you have to keep in mind that when you launch these sorts of psionic attacks, they can be bad, and there are side effects, and you have to figure it all out from there. So they're not something that you just throw at a party for the sake of it. They do have serious effects. Now, most of their psionic abilities are based off spells or very similar to spells, and they act like spells except that they just use points. So the descriptions are written like spells. You have to concentrate on a lot of them and so on. What does make psionics really, really powerful, on top of everything else, is that because they're launched pretty much like right at the beginning, you're looking at, rather than one combat round being a full minute, psionics brings it down to segments. So you're looking at full segments for lots of combat happening. Literally, they could just chuck a wobbly at someone and then cause a bit of a panic, maybe a bit of a stir, run, and then slowly do what they need to do elsewhere. So the strategy of a mind flayer is to stay alive, because I think the magic users have a lot of material components which come from their brains. So they like to sort of stay hidden in the backgrounds, and with powers like domination and ESP, astral projection, they're able to follow their prey and play with them before they really do damage, which is why they're very powerful. And they're always hanging around their lair. They don't like traveling. They don't like leaving their home very often. So if we compare that to one of the devils, this is Despater. And Despater has 266 points, but he's got all the attacks and all the defense modes. So he can just launch an attack, but he has 133 points of attack strength. He launches a Psionic Blast against the party. That's 20 points down, straight up off the attack strength. And then he can do a second one, and that's pretty much it. So he can just go blast, blast, and then he's done. But oh, what a blast. And then he's got like tons of powers and abilities that allow him to do all sorts of other things. As well as all of the standard demons and devil stuff, he's also got some wicked psionic powers as well. So back onto Mind Flayer for a moment. In terms of XP, they generate a healthy dose, being 1800 XP base with 12 XP per hit point, and at 8 plus 4 hit dice, you're looking at a fair few hit points there, so roughly around 40 on average. That is a mighty powerful creature on its own, and if you get a couple together, they will do a right number on your party, being able to do a lot of really funky cool tricks, floating in and out of planes and sitting in the astral plane, ethereal plane, then jumping back out and then getting back in again. They don't have to be strong on the hits because they can just knock everybody out, suck out the brains. 1800 XP base Plus 12 per hit point. Awesome. So psionics itself may be something that you don't include overall for your party or in general, but guaranteed it's going to show up. And with that, you need to have some rules aside or have some understanding of how it's going to work and what the players need to do. Whilst their saving throws will be good, and it's not really dependent upon their level, it's dependent upon their ability scores, and as they get older, change ages, have things happen to them, their scores can increase and decrease a little bit. So there's a small amount of movement, but not much. Generally what a character starts with, they'll be that for quite a while before it changes. And so that means that if they've got that mid-range wisdom plus intelligence, they're still looking at a handful of, a good chance of failing their checks, even at high levels. So, and that's the key, it's even at high levels. So once the players get to a certain point, that's where these other creatures really show their worth, because suddenly you're having a conversation with a devil, and then you just go, okay, roll for initiative. Oh, they go first with psionic attacks and just go boom, boom, boom. Just take out the party with one hit or a couple of hits and we're done. As well as all their other demonic abilities and powers. So you just need to read up a little bit on what the differences are between the psionic and the normal power. Something like invisibility. Psionic invisibility makes people forget that they're around, so it's not quite like magical invisibility. So the character itself is not invisible, just making everybody that's able to make them forget that the character is there. So you just have to look at it from the point of view of a psionic and psychic ability rather than the magic element. But apart from that, pretty much everything runs off the same as a spell of a similar nature or name. Okay, well hopefully that's helped some people and not made it so scary, because when players are saying, man, these things are easy, well, it's time to lift the game a little bit. Chuck in a couple of psionic characters or some encounters and watch them squirm as they try and find wish spells and heal spells and restoration spells and so on to fix things up. It's the nasty. They can get very nasty very quickly, but you just got to be careful there, and make sure that you use it with a measured. As a DM, we have to be very careful. We have all of the options to throw at the players, so we just need to be careful. There might be a little fudging required here and there. Sending them into a panic is one thing, but knocking a character out permanently just because, that's harsh. Alright, subscribe, like, all of the usual bits and pieces. We'll try and throw up some more pieces of information up on the Patreon site. And don't forget to subscribe to also try and find the Flipping and Turning. Yay, it's a good magazine. And hopefully we'll catch up with you all later. So sorry it's been so long. It's a long time between drinks, but it is worth it. Monsters and psionics. Bring it on.